The Joe Rogan Experience.
So, Jimmy Smith, when's the first time they have you working?
Well, I'm doing the pre and post for 220.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you're
some
in
of
the
Fox desk
in California. You
Yeah,
do
in
that from
California
there?
here at Fox. Yeah. And then they've offered me a couple, and I've accepted them, but they haven't announced it yet, so I don't know.
Oh,
I
so
don't know
you
if
can't
it's
say
official
it.
yet.
Right.
So.
Okay.
But soon is the best way to put it.
They just
Color.
I'm assuming they just trust you, right? You don't have to do any bullshit like test shows or anything like that. Because I've heard of
that I'm
guys,
aware of.
I've heard of guys doing test shows. They try people out and shit.
Not that I'm aware of. No, I mean it's already.
Yeah, I mean obviously you know what the fuck you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would imagine that
doing
the
this
the real hard gig has got to be finding one of them play-by-play guys that doesn't annoy the shit out of you.
Here's the deal. No, but
Yeah,
no, seriously.
That's a real job right there. Colors,
Yeah.
colors easy. Doing play-by-play, that's a real job.
But
That's like
they
being
do a lot more of
news
them.
anchor.
But the difference between color and play-by-play is we're specific to a particular sport. I mean, we can call grappling and combat sports and
Right.
whatever. Play-by-play guys do. I'll do basketball one week and then hockey and then
Exactly.
this and then that.
It's a job.
It's a job, but there are a lot more of them. You can go, okay, he's good at basketball and soccer. You can see a body of work before they jump in. Color,
Right.
a lot of times we need a guy who knows the sport, and there are only so many.
That can
It's a
talk.
yeah, it's a very different job, very different skill set.
But
Yeah.
people get real angry if you don't know MMA. If you're like a play-by-play guy and you say some goofy shit and you don't really know the
The
sport,
hardcore MMA fans get
so
mad.
mad.
They get
Yeah,
mad.
they do.
they get
They
mad
freak
and they
out.
don't forgive you either.
They
If
don't.
if they don't think you really know the sport or really love the sport, those two things are critical.
Yeah.
You have to really know it and really love it. Otherwise, they're like, "Fuck you."
People hated me when I commentated for King of the Cage. Every show I had to say something stupid. Every show I had to say
There
something
it is,
stupid.
Eddie. He just did it. They just showed it. They just showed the big Jeremy Stevens haymaker. Oh.
I sucked. Oh my god.
Well,
that was terrible.
You didn't think of it as a. You know what you were really good at? You were really good as the guy in between the rounds that was explaining who won the fight. Like when you and I, people don't even remember this, but we worked together. It would be Goldberg and me, and then for a bunch of cards, you would be beside us scoring.
unofficial
You were the
judge.
scorecard guy.
Yeah. So he had, but Eddie had a real system. Like we talked about it, and I was like, "How are you doing this?" And he had a really well thought out system where he had a line down a piece of paper, and he had a bunch of categories, and he had all these different things, whether it was takedowns and so he marked all these things on top of watching the fight. He wanted to know, like, be able to look down on it, like, oh, he landed all these right hands.
Yeah, I could look at the end of the fight.
Yeah.
They go to me. I have to talk about what happened in the first. Oh, I gave him the second because remember that second he had 2 takedowns. But if I didn't write it down, I would forget.
Yeah.
So as I'm waiting to go on, I'm reviewing that first round. It's
Right.
a lot easier to see what actually happened because you forget, or anyways, I do. I would forget unless I wrote it down.
The funniest thing to me, or the most frustrating thing to me, is they wanted me to do scorecards, kind of like unofficial scorecard, whatever, just like you did. And I would do it, and every time I never wrote down a number without explaining what I was talking about. I gave it 10-9, it's a close round, but I gave it because of this, this, and this. And people would always act like you just threw out a fucking number without saying anything. What was he thinking? I said what I was thinking. I never just wrote down 9-10. I always said, and here's why. You may disagree, but here's my logic behind what I'm saying. You can disagree with me, fine. But the people that act like I just write down a number without explaining, it's insane. I'm so not going to miss that.
Yeah, commentators get
Not gonna miss that at all.
crucified. When
It's
I
tough.
did post-fight interviews once, I said congratulations to Randy Couture. I said congratulations, Chuck. or it was the
Yeah. No, that's what you did. Yeah.
yeah.
That's what you did.
And I
that's
didn't
awesome.
realize I said that. And when I walked out of the octagon, who was it? Joe Silva goes, dude, you said congratulations, Chuck. And I said, what? What? Oh my God, I'm going to get fired. I thought I was going to get fired right there. And I went up to Joe and I said, dude, did I say congratulations, Chuck? You go, yes. I'm like, oh no, this is my last show. I totally thought I was getting fired, 100%.
I can talk about this because we joke about it. We joked about it in Bellator, but Jen Brown one time we were in, and it was a live piece. It was just to the house, so it didn't go out on air or anything. It was just for the house.
Jim Brown football? Jim Brown? From
No,
the
no,
old
no.
UFC?
Jen Brown, who does stand-up stuff for Bellator.
Okay.
We were in Vacaville, Oklahoma, and she said we had been in Kansas the week before, and she goes, "Hey, Kansas!" And the place just died. And she turns to one of our producers, she goes, "Oh, that they really didn't." they really didn't react much. And the guy goes, "You said Kansas, we're in Oklahoma." And so we laugh about that. We always joke about it. I love Jen, but for weeks it was, what state are we in, Jen? We just met forever. But it was just an in-house piece. It didn't go out on TV or anything. It was hilarious.
That's lucky.
But we've all done.
Knows.
Yeah, we've all
everybody
done.
Heard
Everybody knows that she messed
Chuck.
up.
It was on the underground.
Dude,
people were talking shit.
I've called over 1,000 fights. I've fucked up a bunch of times.
Oh, man.
The human brain just doesn't work perfect. You make mistakes. Sometimes what drives me crazy is I have a very good recall for fights and for scenarios and positions that people have been in and ways guys won. But occasionally there'll be a guy and I can't remember his fucking name. And it's like weird. But it's a guy that I've seen fight like Jorge Masvidal or someone like that I've seen fight 100 times. Like, how the fuck why isn't that one coming out? It's like the brain is just not a perfect vehicle. It just doesn't always work right. It's like a Range Rover. They look beautiful, but Range Rovers work most of the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I have a friend who has a Range Rover, and I asked him, I said, hey, do you like that car? He's like, yeah, but this is my second one. My last one was a lemon. I go, fuck, I knew it. And he's like, but it's a great car. It's amazing.
When it drives, it's
works.
amazing.
It's like that's like how a brain is. It's just not always good. So you saying, congratulations, Chuck, and then leave, and you're like, how did I do that?
I'll watch fights. Not necessarily yours, of course, but I'll watch somebody calling a fight and I'll know when they spaced on the name. They'll start going,
yes!
That pause.
Yes!
When you're watching, you go, he spaced on his name,
Yes!
dude. And sometimes it'll be basketball, football, whatever, but I'll know as a broadcaster, I'm like, he spaced, he looked at his notes, and he got the name back, but he spaced on the fucking name. And it happens,
possible.
man.
100% possible.
It happens all the time.
My big fear is that I'm going to be interviewing a fighter after a fight, and then I can't remember their name when I congratulate them.
The biggest fear, bro.
That's
not just you, dude. That's mine too.
Before I go out there, I will write it like if it's a dude I've never seen fight before, like maybe won by first round knockout. I've never seen him fight before. I'm like, oh shit, who is this guy? He might have come from CFA or something like that. I'll write his name down. I'll read it. I'll say it back. I'll repeat. You might see me walking to the stage, to the cage, and I got my earpiece in, and I'm saying, blah 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 blah. I'm saying his name. I don't want to fuck it up.
You are not alone, though, dude. That fear is huge. Because you're thinking about the question too. Because you're thinking about what to ask them. And were we on air when we were saying this? We were talking about interviewing fighters is literally the hardest part of the job because they're
the post-fight
geeked up
interviews
and
are the hardest ones because you don't have time to prepare for it.
No.
And then you have time to ask him one, maybe two questions. That's it. And everyone has their own question in their own head that they want to ask. And if you don't come up with something entertaining or creative, people talk shit on you.
It's also very important.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's also very important. This is what I tell people that are just trying it out for the first time, and then any young people that are thinking about getting into MMA commentary. You're not the show. Like you are just trying to extract information out of this person. Like your question should be just to lead them. I try to have as little personality in those things as possible. I'm just trying to just give you the platform. Yeah. I'm just trying to give you maybe a path to take your answer. I saw some beautiful things happen in the fight. I want you to express what happened in your mind, or maybe there's some adversity that you had to go through. I want to know how bad it was, but I don't want to be there. I'm just the guy that has to say those words.
Yeah, I hated post-fight interviews. I never enjoyed that shit.
The flip side of that, though, that I've run into personally, of overdoing it too, is if your question isn't hey, great performance tonight, man. If it's too open end, a lot of times they go, yeah. You know what I mean? If you don't ask them something a little specific, they'll just kind of go, yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, if you don't say, great,
they're kind of tired, they're out of breath.
Yeah, so it's that you want them to go wherever they want to go, but also if you don't ask something specific enough, sometimes they'll go, yeah, it was.
How shitty
Depending
are those
on who the
post-fight
person
interviews
was,
with some of the dozens with a translator?
Oh, those are rough.
You
gotta go back and forth. But honestly, sometimes that gives you more time. I always try to talk slow and give them something. I try to simplify what I'm saying. Yeah. But even then, sometimes I fuck that up. You know, it's just it's one of the weirder jobs.
Yeah, I never liked it. I never liked that at all. I never really liked commentating either.
I tried to get DC when DC was doing it, because DC was doing a few of them, like we were doing it, and I go, "Oh, that's your job now, bro." He's like, "Fuck that! You're doing that, Joe Rogan. Get in there." I go, "No, man. You're doing a good job. I like sitting here. I'm just gonna sit back." He was like, "Fuck that," because he was doing like the fight pass prelim ones.
Unless you're in the industry, you'd be surprised at how many people don't realize that there's a play-by-play guy and a color.
They
They
have
just
no
see
clue.
two dudes talking.
Yeah.
They don't know. I didn't know. I was a grown-ass man. When I first got offered the job for King of the Cage, I didn't know the difference. I just thought, yeah, there's two old dudes talking, and they're just chit-chatting. I didn't see the system and the
Well,
art,
you know, there's
really.
a problem though. The problem in MMA is that the color guy is the martial arts expert.
Yes.
And
That's the way it is in football.
But the play-by-play guy
It's just the news guy.
is just the guy. But the play-by-play guy in sports is kind of calling what's happening as well. He's saying, you know, they're moving the ball, they're doing this, they're going this.
This formation is kind of.
But when
Yeah.
you're calling a fight, especially when the fight goes to the ground, that play-by-play guy is not really saying anything, right?
Yeah, he could say he's in the mount, taking big shots in the mount. You don't have to be an expert to
A
know
little
that.
bit, but he's basically he's like when Goldie and I had a great rhythm, because Goldie like kind of laid off especially when it would go to the ground. He would lay off, and he would just sort of like, you know, he would set me up. Like he'd say, and he moves into the mount position, or he would say, you know, something like that, and then he would just lay it up for me, and then I would elaborate on the progression of techniques and where they were at.
Yeah, that's what he's supposed to do. That. That's the hardest motherfucking job ever. I didn't know. So I get this job. Bud Brudsman, he takes over the production part of King of the Cage, and he wants to use me as a commentator because the producer and I went to Jean-Jacques Machado Academy. He knew me as the MMA fanatic guy, and he asked me if I wanted to commentate, and I said, yeah, fuck, I'll try it. I didn't know shit. Those first King of the Cages, he didn't know there was a difference between a play-by-play and a color guy. The producer didn't know the difference, because once I started really listening to the broadcast and the UFC, I started listening to the opening and how they open shit. I go, oh, there's two jobs here. This guy is just a news telecaster, and this other guy's the expert. Didn't even really realize it. I thought they were both experts.
They're just talking.
I thought there were two dudes just talking.
Totally
and they were both
different
experts.
jobs, man.
So yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Once I realized that, I talked to Bud. I said, "Hey, listen, there's two jobs going on here. I don't want to be the play-by-play guy. I want to be the color guy." He said, "Do both. You're going to do both." I go, all sports don't have guys that do both. You have a color guy and you have a play-by-play guy.
You explain that to the
He
producer.
Goes, to the producer.
To the producer. Okay, I just want to
To the
confirm.
producer.
That's insane.
He'd never done sports before, so he
Okay.
didn't understand. He just said, "Dude, you're gonna do both of you." Me and Don the Dragon Wilson, we were
Don
both
the
just
Dragon, I
in there.
remember.
Don the
We
Dragon.
were both just in there winging it. It was so bad.
What's
It's
Don the
so
Dragon
terrible.
Wilson up to these days?
I have no idea. But those are some of the worst shows ever for commentary. The first oh,
You
man.
own it so hard, dude.
It was
you
so
own it, and I
bad.
love
It was
that.
so bad. Oh my
And
god!
then you did some shit for Pride too. People forget about that. You had that slicked hair.
Pride 10 with the Henzo and Sakuraba when Henzo got his arm
Guy
broken.
Metzger got headbutted by Vanderlei Silva.
Yes.
bro.
You were saying that that Sakuraba was never going to submit Henzo.
Yes, that was one of the biggest blunders ever. Sakuraba has the Kimura grip in and they're standing. And I said, I'm in the commentary.
Yeah.
I said, that may work at his gym, but that's Henzo Gracie. It's never going to work on him. And then boom, he breaks his arm.
On cue. I call the fight. I
I
call the
said, that
fight.
may be working at the gym.
Dude.
But ain't going to work here.
There was a guy, Ed Wild West was fighting, and he had never knocked anybody out. Really good striker, but pitter pat kind of striker. And I literally said, "Man, Ed's landing great, but not a knockout guy, and he instantly knocks him out. First one of his career, right there, right in front of me. I'm like, he did that just to make me fucking look stupid. Thanks.
Oh, that's when it happens, man.
Good job, man.
Yeah. It's you can never. It's almost like the universe is punishing you for hubris. Like you're pretending you know more than you do. There's no. Just shut the fuck up. Say it looks good. It's deep.
There was
yeah. Seriously, you get in that habit of going.
Yeah. Who knows?
He probably will, but you don't know.
There was this one fight. Fernando Vasconcelos fought this one guy, and he schooled him.
Dude, I forgot about
Vasconcelos. Dude.
He's like one of the great guys that
jiu-jitsu.
never really did it.
Fought Carl Parisian in King of the Cage. Remember that?
Fuck, he was good.
A great fight.
Carl fucked him up, didn't he?
Yeah, Carl won that fight. Yeah, I was there.
And he in a fight that he won, because he won, I think, 2 straight. He had good hands, and he wrestled, and he had a guy. He passed a guy's guard and had him in north-south, and I said, this position is called, some people call it north-south, but if you look in old judo books, it's actually called the teabag. And then I just kept going and Don the Dragon, I never stopped there. and I would just throw those in. That's how retarded I was.
Oh my God.
Just having fun.
Just to do it.
Well, you
I just
didn't
having
take it
fun.
seriously.
And Bud loved it. Terry Tribblecock, the owner, hated it. He hated it, but Bud loved it. The producer loved it. Every now and then, I would say some crazy, wild shit, but Terry hated it. And the director. No, Terry loved it. What am I saying? The director, Steve, he hated it. He was begging me to stop. Because I wasn't being
Directors
professional.
tend to be the
I
tough
wasn't
ones,
being
yeah.
professional.
Yeah.
But the owner didn't care. He loved it. So, anyways, I sucked regardless, but I'm a retard.
Well, we're all in the right spot.
I'm
We're
not-
all where we want to be.
I'm not born to commentate. That's not my thing. I look like now when people offer me jobs, I'm like, I don't want to commentate. I want to just enjoy the fight and just
Dude,
watch.
that's what literally
You know
what
I
I
mean?
said to Dana when he forced me into doing it. Don't you remember when you and I used to get free tickets?
I don't want to work
started
it. I want to watch it and just relax.
Doing commentary because I would get free tickets from the UFC. And this was like when the UFC first started going to Vegas.
Yeah.
And Eddie and I were like, dude, the UFC's in Vegas. This is crazy. We got to go. And Dana White somehow or another found out that I was a fan. So he started sending me, he's like, hey, we'll fly you out. We'll give you free tickets. I'm like, fuck yeah. And so we started going and hanging out with them. And I started doing commentary because when we'd hang out, I'd be like, have you ever seen Sakurai? Did you watch Pride? What do you watch overseas? Like, have you seen any of the Shudo fights? I'm like, you got to see this guy. And I'd start telling him about this guy and that guy. And
Shuto was my favorite, man.
Yeah. Oh,
Hayato
man.
Maha Sakurai. Love that guy.
Yeah.
Love him.
Amazing fights. So I started talking to him about all these crazy fights that he had never heard of. And he's like, do you want to do commentary? And the next thing you know, I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to work.
And then boom.
I did
And then
the
here we
first
are.
18 shows for free.
I was sitting alone for a couple shows. I was just all by myself, VIP front row. I mean, like, I didn't come here to be by myself.
We saw some classic shit, though.